How can you adorn a speech, you might wonder? How can you create images in the audience's or in the reader's minds? Well, you can use tropes, metaphorical language, you can use repetition, you can use contradictions, you can use images. And the most common ones, sometimes you need to analyze what people say, what are they referring to, so always make sure that you have a good metaphor or that you refer to something that people know so that they get the same idea as you have when you try to convey it. And is it really applicable? Does it have anything to do with what I'm trying to argue for or talk about? We have the metaphorical language tropes. It gives your speech color. You replace words with an image, for instance, a metaphor. And a metaphor, we have this man here, we talk about the CEO's parachute. And we all know what that means, that he can get away with a lot of money and he's safe. And we have something called the spring of life, the youth. That's when it begins. We have also parable when we make a comparison, like threatening clouds, unemployment, inflation, and giant national debts pile up along the horizon of Sweden. Here, the writer has used the weather condition, bad weather condition, to really emphasize how dangerous the situation is in Sweden. On the other hand, it can be used by somebody who talks to the one he or she loves. Your eyes shine like fire in the darkness of the night. That means that this is a beacon of light in my life. Fantastic. There is also a possibility to make a personification. Thoughts and ideas that take a human shape. You say, her conscience struck her. Or repetition is the mother of the skill. And of course we're not talking about people, but it's a personification. We can also use metaphors from nature. We can see one here. It's very small for you perhaps. The new boss is planning to weed out older or less experienced staff. To weed out simply means to get rid of. But when you use this reference to the nature, we can start thinking about a garden. Yeah, of course we need to take care of it, otherwise it won't renew itself, it won't stay fresh. And there are other things like this as well. So if you take time to read here, you can find something interesting. We have other rhetorical figures, like illusion. You allude to something or someone real or fictive that people know. They must know about it, otherwise it falls down. Like if you say it turned out to be his Waterloo, then the people listening need to know about Napoleon and European history to realize that this was a total defeat that you're referring to. If you have antithesis, this is very common among politicians or people talking about the environment to scare people. You say good and evil, darkness and light, to really scare people, to make people think. A hyperbole is an exaggeration. You always, or when in the Bible it mentions the camel through a needle's eye, and we know this is not possible. So it's really a huge exaggeration. Lighthearted, on the other hand, is an understatement. If you say you never. If you use irony, you say something but you mean totally opposite. If you talk about parallelism, you use two sentences after one another that express exactly the same idea. We have to gather to be united. It is time to close ranks, to stand firm against thee. And then you have two things meaning the same thing. The irony here, you have Jonathan Swift's example from A Modest Proposal. There was starvation on Ireland, and it was horrible. And then he wrote this proposal that they could actually cook and make food out of the small Irish children. And he didn't mean this, of course, but to really highlight how horrible the idea was. Some more rhetorical figures. Repetition, of course, serves as a reinforcement. my wish, my dream, my hope is. And then you really emphasize this dream and you use just different words to say the same thing. Climax and intensification is when you really use your voice, you raise your voice, you show your emotions, because this is important. And often at the end of speeches they have this intensification where they really want to leave the audience with a feeling that I need to act. Synonymity is when many words of similar meaning are put on top of each other, and this can be linked to intensification. I promise, I assure you, I solemnly swear to always be of help. If you have sarcasm, that's stronger irony, it's bitter irony, very sharp, and it's very popular among comedians today. You have the anaphor, which is often used by politicians too, but most famous is probably the speech by Martin Luther King. I have a dream, and he starts many sentences with this, and to really roll in his thought, and so he will make you feel that we have the same dream, which you can see when you follow this along. So this is what you can think about. These are just a few, there are so many, but if you have this in mind when you prepare a speech or when you prepare to write an argumentative article or a discussion article, take time to think about how words actually can affect the audience.